A small fire gathers strength in a fireworks storage compound in the heart of a residential neighborhood in Enschede, Holland. On the street, people don't give it much thought. They have no idea that the burning warehouse is packed with fireworks, enough explosive power to trigger the biggest blast in Holland since World War II. As firefighters rush to the scene, a crowd gathers in the streets around the warehouse. Some set up lawn chairs in the Saturday afternoon sun to watch the show, but it'll be a show with a tragic ending. In the next few minutes, the town of Enschede will be torn apart by a devastating explosion that'll kill dozens and injure thousands. A shocked nation demands answers. Was it really fireworks that caused this massive explosion? Or was there something else hidden in the storage containers? And what started the fire? Was it an accident or something more sinister? Saturday, May 13th, 2000. The day before Mother's Day, in Enschede, a small university town in northeast Holland. It's a spectacular spring day. The streets and cafes are full, and the sun burns hot in a cloudless sky. Conditions are perfect for the Dutch Mapping Authority to get clear aerial footage of the city. It's 2:30 in the afternoon when the first signs of trouble appear. A few wisps of smoke in the north end of the town. It's an old industrial quarter, now surrounded by low-income housing and a thriving student ghetto. Suddenly, fireworks burst and crackle in the afternoon sky. A crowd gathers to watch. Freelance cameraman Gerrit Poorts and Jacques Huygens think it might be worth a few shots.
We got a fire and a free fireworks show. I said, who sets fireworks off? Which crazy guy doing that?
Gerrit and Jacques don't know it, but their pictures will play a crucial role in unraveling the tragedy that's about to strike Enschede. Firefighters at the Hengelstraat station house suspect something's not right even before they get the call. Bert Conhoord is a 17-year veteran on the force.
We looked that way, and we saw a plume of smoke. And Hans and I, we said to each other, something's up. Let's get to the trucks.
Firefighters are already on high alert. An arsonist has been setting fires in industrial buildings for a few months. Everyone's on edge. The fire is in the S.E Fireworks storage facility. Response time is critical. But when fire trucks get close, they're blocked by a huge crowd of onlookers.
People just refused to leave the street. They wanted to watch the fireworks.
Johan Bosch is on the first truck to arrive on the scene.
With the high-powered hose on hand, I thought I could just spray them off the street. But there were cameras and journalists around, photographers, and I thought to myself, tomorrow in the papers it will say, firefighters spray people off the street. Actually, I should have done it.
Police finally managed to push the crowd back 300 meters. Danny De Vries, another freelance cameraman, searches for a clear vantage point. Neither he or the crowd of onlookers consider that a clear sightline will put them directly in the path of the blast.
And everybody was just standing and laughing, and yeah, it was like a kind of reunion of the neighborhood.
But a daredevil photographer named Marcel van Nieuwenhoven goes inside the compound for the elusive shot. On this day, that shot will cost him his life. A few blocks away, cameraman Gerrit Poorts and Jacques Huygens have climbed to the roof of a building to get a high-angle shot.
That is staying here.
I was over here.
And I was over there, in the lower level. En Gerrit is filming here.
Not more smoke than it's coming from a barbecue.
Andreas Schulte leads a second team of firemen into the storage compound. Initially, Schulte thinks everything's going to be okay.
The fire, in our estimation, was under control.
But he doesn't realize what they're up against. The S.E Fireworks facility holds the biggest cache of fireworks in Holland. There's one giant bunker, plus 16 steel shipping containers, and 7 reinforced concrete garages called MAVO boxes. Fire Chief Andreas Schulte and his 2 partners stand on this MAVO box. And a lone firefighter stands on this roof. The main fire burns here in C2, the central assembly room of the main building. Freelance cameramen Gerrit and Jacques are shooting from this rooftop. And at the police line is videographer Danny de Vries. Inside the compound here is Marcel van Nieuwenhoven. And with him are the firemen, who now have a fight on their hands. Exploding fireworks ignite dozens of small fires all over the compound. By now, the co-owner of S.E Fireworks, Ruud Bakker, has joined the crowd outside in the street.
We saw a white smoke cloud in the air and decided to drive in that direction.
Ruud Bakker is the only one here who really knows how dangerous the situation is.
I said, "What in God's name are you guys doing? We have to leave immediately."
Back on the roof, Andreas Schulte hears something terrifying.
We heard some more rumbling. More and more fireworks came out of the bunker. To my right, from within the container, came a very strange sound. My gut feeling at that point was, we gotta get out of here.
Schulte and his 2 partners retreat from the roof. Down below them, the other team is forced to abandon the flaming bunker. Marcel van Nieuwenhoven is still waiting for the big shot and hangs back. A block away on the rooftop, the 2 cameramen see no warning signs of what's about to happen. The crowd of gawkers on the street continues to swell. But inside the compound, the firefighters are running for their lives. The fuse is lit, and the time bomb that has been ticking inside the S.E Fireworks facility is about to explode. In the Dutch town of Enschede, disaster is only seconds away. What firefighters at first thought was a fairly harmless blaze is turning into a killer. The fire is burning here, inside the main assembly room of the S.E Fireworks company. Surrounding it are 23 storage containers, all packed with fireworks. Gerrit Poort and Jacques Huygens videotape the scene from a rooftop here. The exploding fireworks are starting more fires in the neighborhood. Just to the northwest, the huge Grolsch beer brewery is on fire. That's serious because it contains 8,600 kilograms of highly toxic ammonia. From a small neighborhood grocery store, manager Willy Wogemuth looks at the sky and fears the worst.
I saw black smoke in the air and I thought, this is not going to turn out well, because I knew it was a warehouse for fireworks.
With a violent hiss, one of the storage containers belches a massive ball of flame, sending firefighters running for cover. Small blazes burn everywhere, and fireworks rattle off like machine gun rounds.
I fled and sought cover behind the fire truck with a colleague of mine and a police officer.
But one firefighter remains in the open, standing alone on top of one of the storage containers. Suddenly, a massive explosion rips through the compound.
It was so powerful, it lifted the truck half a meter into the air.
On the rooftop 2 blocks away, cameramen Gerrit and Jacques take the full force of the shockwave.
I fell down and Gerrit is laying below here on the ground at one hand above.
I had my camera something like this. I made it open so I was looking like, oh, what's going on, like this.
On the streets below them, there's panic as the crowd is pelted by flying debris. As photographer Marcel van Nieuwenhoven tries to flee, the shockwave throws him face down. Videographer Danny de Vries keeps shooting.
I run across the streets to a house over there, and I'm standing in the garden in front of a window. I turn around again and keeps filming.
The co-owner of S.E Fireworks, Ruud Bakker, is watching from under an awning.
Net op dat moment dat ik dus naar buiten toe wil gaan, is die eerste ontploffing.
The first explosion happened, and a large sliding security door crashes into the gable and injures me.
En drukt de gevel in, en daar raak ik dus ook gewond.
Bleeding and afraid for his life, Ruud Bakker runs. He's caught on tape by Danny de Vries.
And that's also the point where you see me walking on the screen, where everybody claims that I'm escaping.
Later, some will suggest that he was fleeing a crime scene. Inside the S.E Fireworks storage compound, the blast is far more intense.
When the explosion was over, it was quiet, and across the street near a house, there was a man lying down.
The injured man is Marcel van Nieuwenhoven. But as Bert Konehorn moves to rescue him, he is literally blown off his feet. A second blast, 6 times more powerful than the first, rips through the compound. In a chain reaction, all the storage containers violently explode.
I realized I was under the rubble. First thing I thought was, it's a collapse, and I thought this can't be the end. I just want out.
Around the corner, the grocery store manager, Willy Wolgemuth, is right in the path of the blast.
I saw the window coming at me and I grabbed my colleague. We were literally blown about 4 to 5 meters through the canteen.
Closer to the blast site, Danny de Vries is unhurt, and amazingly, his camera is intact.
And I didn't know that the camera was still working. And of course the images are not really good, but you can see everything around.
In the rubble of the S.E Fireworks storage compound, fireman Bert Konehorn staggers to his feet.
So I looked around and there was a lot of smoke. It's indescribable. I didn't understand what was going on.
You walk down the street in darkness and all of a sudden, there's a zombie in front of you. In other words, a badly injured colleague bleeding on all sides of his head. Totally gray. You see zombies in movies, but I saw one in real life. It was Bert.
I lost some of my team. I left with 5 men, and in the fire service, if you leave with 5, you return with 5 men.
The firemen go back into the smoke and fire to look. They find Theo Hesselink unconscious in a pile of rubble.
We moved him about 50 meters to a safer area where I tried to revive him. But the paramedics stopped me and said, "It's too late." And then for me, it's like a light went out.
A seismograph 32 kilometers away registers the second blast at 1.8 on the Richter scale. House windows are shattered as far as 1 kilometer away. Thousands of civilians and a handful of firefighters are instantly missing. And there are fires burning everywhere.
As soon that Jack and I realized what was going on, there was a smell in the air, and we almost immediately said to each other, "That's the smell of death."
The sky turns black as the air fills with smoke and ash. In what's left of his store, Willy Wogemuth is confronted by a scene of utter chaos.
All of the windows of the store were gone. There was a lot of smoke blowing into the store. People were screaming. Everywhere you looked, you saw people lying on the ground.
The street is choked with wreckage, and everywhere there's dead and injured.
Then I saw a first aid guy, but they were so busy they thrust a first aid kit in my hand, and they said, "Do whatever you can." So we bandaged up the wounded.
Willy Wogemuth is one of 2 people who will be cited for bravery on this day. The other is the off-duty cop, Chris Ganeshi. He's on his way to his mother's house just 150 meters from the explosion.
When it happened, that first explosion, you could suddenly look right into the house.
Ganeshi begins helping with the rescue efforts. He sees a group of people huddled in the doorway of a burning building.
I called the 7 people who were protecting themselves under a house over there. They moved towards me, and as soon as I started walking with them, the whole building collapsed. If they'd stayed there, then 6 or 7 more people would have been dead.
Before the day's out, 24 people will owe him their lives.
I thought it was an airplane crash.
Police detective Ed Rangshire hears the explosions from his home. He will soon become one of the lead investigators.
I decided to drive to the police bureau to start the investigation and help with the emergency response.
Ontzettend kwaad ben.
I'm very upset. I wanted to know who the hell has done this to me and who was there.
45 minutes after the explosions, most of the injured have been bused to hospital and the area evacuated. But the whole neighborhood is still a raging firestorm, spewing out a plume of smoke visible 30 kilometers away. Firefighters and paramedics can't even get close. The Dutch town of Enschede is in shock. More than 1,000 people injured and 22 dead. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging cameras vividly show the huge fires still burning. The face of Enschede is unrecognizable. 600 houses torn to pieces, 100 factories and shops laid to waste. 2,000 people suddenly homeless. Even before the flames die out in Enschede, there's anger and disbelief. What caused the double explosion? Was it sabotage or arson? And what was inside the fireworks storage compound that blew up with such violence? To police detective Hans Kamperman, Enschede looks like a combat zone.
Het deed meedenken aan Kosovo, waar ik geweest ben kort na de
It reminded me of Kosovo, where I was shortly after the war ended. The smell of the burning homes, the damage, the heat that still remained. The bricks radiated heat that was incredibly intense.
Stenen die nog de warmte uitstraalden. Dat was ontzettend intensief.
Still, Enschede was lucky. The disaster could have been much worse. There were 66 seconds between the two explosions. That gave hundreds of people just enough time to run for cover. And the fire at the Grolsch beer brewery was smothered before it spewed tons of highly toxic ammonia into the air. It's days before the blast site finally cools down enough for rescuers to search for trapped survivors. They don't find any. On the day of the explosions, Chris Ganeshi was a hero. His bravery saved more than 20 lives. Today, he and his mother dig through the rubble of their home looking for a miracle, and they find it. A burned and battered strongbox. But inside, the family jewels have somehow survived the inferno. As memorial services are held for the victims, investigators are under huge pressure to explain what happened.
The biggest challenge was the enormous amount of information that had to be analyzed. We had to get a handle on the amount of video and photographs.
It'll be one of the largest police investigations in Dutch history.
We hebben het onderzoek verdeeld in een tactisch onderzoek.
We divided it into a tactical investigation, technical, and a financial, economic, and leadership investigation. In the beginning, we had 100 investigators.
In totaal hadden we in de beginfase 100 man aan het werk.
To understand the shape of the neighborhood before and after the explosion, police study the aerial photos taken by coincidence just hours before the disaster. To document the evidence, investigators have hundreds of panoramic digital images taken of the entire disaster area. Photographers move across the site in a grid pattern, stopping exactly every 20 meters. The digital images are transferred to a computer where the image shows up like this, but with a few quick mouse clicks, it appears in a recognizable format. The scale of the destruction is enormous. Is it possible that fireworks alone could have done this? Newspapers run hundreds of photos, and the videos are broadcast over and over again. In the absence of hard facts, conspiracy theories abound. S.E was really a secret arms depot. Maybe the disaster was the work of the Russians or the IRA.
With all these ghost stories that were doing the rounds, it became very important for the victims that there was someone in the short term who was able to answer their questions.
Consultants Dave Boers and Bas Vandenheuvel are hired by the families of the victims to conduct a private investigation. One of their specialties is analyzing video.
Somebody believed that in the pictures of Gerrit Poort, they could see a rocket lifting off from the S.E Fireworks area. I have to admit that at first viewing, it appeared to me as well that it was a rocket.
Bas and Dave do a frame-by-frame computer enhancement of the mysterious video, and the results aren't so mysterious. Using the size of buildings as a reference, they estimate that the rocket would have to be 12 meters tall, lifting off at more than the speed of sound. Impossible.
If it was a 12-meter rocket, it was way too heavy to travel that fast. So you come to the conclusion that it wasn't a rocket.
Turns out it's an exploding piece of debris, trailing dust and smoke in its wake. Forensic experts take rock, dirt, and cement samples from the bottom of the blast crater for testing. They expect to find traces of a bomb, some high explosive, way more powerful than fireworks. Jaap Veerheim is an explosives expert at TNO, the Netherlands Institute of Applied Scientific Research.
The central building was manufactured of of reinforced concrete, and when it failed, so there were big chunks of concrete just thrown over hundreds of meters, many pieces up to 600-700 meters even.
The samples are sent to the lab of the Netherlands Forensic Institute. They're tested for high explosive using a chromatogram, a machine that uses absorption rates to determine which foreign particles exist in soil samples. But the tests come up negative, another dead end. Now investigators have to figure out if it's even possible that fireworks alone caused the explosion, and if so, what kind of fireworks? A massive explosion at the S.E Fireworks facility has devastated the town of Enschede. Investigators comb the debris looking for traces of some sort of high explosive, but there are none. It seems impossible, but evidence suggests this disaster was caused by fireworks alone. But what kind of fireworks? Professional fireworks are classified by the United Nations Hazard Division to set out guidelines for firefighters. 1.4 is the weakest variety, not considered a major danger. 1.3 fireworks will burn fiercely and should not be approached without a heat shield. The more powerful 1.2 variety will produce small explosions and some projectiles. 1.1 fireworks are the most potent and will explode en masse, throwing out dangerous amounts of debris. Firefighters are advised to stay well away and under cover. S.E Fireworks was licensed to store only the lower grade fireworks. But investigators believe there must have been something much more powerful in the compound. The first blast packed a punch equivalent to an 800-kilo detonation of TNT.
The last one, the major one, was about 4,000 to 5,000 kilograms of TNT.
The biggest conventional explosion in Holland since the Second World War. An audit of the company books indicates there were no heavy fireworks in storage. But what if the paperwork is wrong? Jan Stecklenburg is an investigator for the company that insures S.E Fireworks. He travels to a typical Chinese factory like this one, where S.E Fireworks buys its product. There, he finds a crude assembly line.
They go to the bunker, they pick up 4 kilos of gunpowder from the bunker, they put on the table, and with the little combs, they fill the nutshells.
The nutshells, literally coconut shells, are then used as measuring cups for the fireworks.
It's all pure handwork.
And if you want a bigger bang, all you have to do is pay.
It's not difficult, if you're looking for that, to go to China and to get fireworks that has more gunpowder in it than what is allowed.
And if you create your own label, they'll stick it on for you, no questions asked. Back in Holland, investigators catch a break. They seize a shipment en route from China to S.E Fireworks. The contents are listed as 1.4 grade fireworks, but test results tell a different story.
It's quite clear that it was much more stored of a more severe class than related to the license tells us.
When those test results are compared with the damage at the blast site, investigators have their answer.
A lot of 1.3 reactions and even more severe, even 1.1.
Investigators conclude that S.E Fireworks criminally violated its license on 2 counts. The storage facility was overloaded and it contained fireworks too powerful for the permit. Based on these findings, a Dutch court finds S.E Fireworks owner Ruud Bakker and his partner guilty of storage and license violations. Both are fined and sentenced to 6 months in prison. But investigators still haven't answered the big question. They go back to ground zero. At the epicenter of the blast, the concrete pad that once supported the main building was pummeled a meter into the ground by the force of the explosion. Debris was blown away from the site of the main building, and the exposed rebar is bent out towards the surrounding buildings. Investigators gather thousands of photographs and hours of videotape shot by onlookers on the day of the explosion. They also take statements from over 2,000 witnesses. Within a few days, they put together a sequence of events based on the evidence and eyewitness accounts. The first place to catch fire was the main fireworks assembly area. It sent up a plume of smoke, and fireworks shot off in all directions. Next, fires broke out in the surrounding storage containers. The first explosion happened when those containers detonated in a chain reaction. And 66 seconds later, the whole compound blows up. But what started the initial fire that triggered it all? Putting the fire's point of origin inside the main building focuses the investigation. This building, C2, was where the fireworks were assembled from raw materials like gunpowder, accelerant, and firing tubes. Police start with testimony from the employees of S.E Fireworks, and two theories emerge. Employees testify that the building had been rewired by someone who was not a certified electrician. This person is never identified. But could bad wiring have started the fire? Other witnesses report dangerous handling practices inside the storage area. One report says that nitrated cotton, the material that is cut into wicks for fireworks, was stored in racks beside an electric heater to dry. Nitrated cotton is extremely sensitive to heat. It is meant to be stored wet and wrapped in plastic. It could easily have ignited if placed too close to a heater. But in the end, both of these theories are impossible to prove. The scale of the devastation is so massive that no evidence can be found for either theory. Maybe the building itself holds other clues. Peter de Bruin heads the quick response team of the Netherlands Forensic Institute.
The challenge was to find out what happened there, what caused the first fire.
High-grade fireworks like the ones that ripped Enschede apart are extremely volatile. They're meant to be stored underground in hardened climate-controlled bunkers. Exposed to too much heat, there's a strong possibility they could auto-ignite. When de Bruin looked at photographs taken before the explosion, something struck him immediately. The massive skylights in the roof of the fireworks assembly building. And on the day of the disaster, it was unusually hot.
This assembly room would go very warm, and fireworks might have auto-ignited.
Could the ambient temperature in the storage area have caused the fireworks to auto-ignite? De Bruin runs tests in the forensics lab.
We determined that it would auto-ignite only at about 165 degrees Celsius. So it's impossible for this material to auto-ignite because of the sun shining through the skylights.
Investigators are stumped. Then news that changes the whole course of the investigation. After reviewing interviews of thousands of witnesses, police conclude that the fire did not start in the main assembly area. Several witnesses independently testified they saw fireworks ignite outside the building moments before the fire started.
The spot where we ascertained the first fireworks went off was 20 meters in front of Building G, between the building and the bunkers.
But if the fireworks went off outside the building, before the fire, they must have been set off deliberately. Now faulty wiring, spontaneous combustion, or any theory that placed the point of ignition inside the building must be ruled out. For the investigators, the theory of arson is back on the front burner because of a serial arsonist still at large.
In the
months before the disaster, there had been fires in the area, and those were primarily fires in industrial complexes, large businesses.
Grotere bedrijven werden in brand gezet.
The problem is the fire at S.E Fireworks doesn't fit the pattern. That arsonist never works in residential areas. He's lit every fire at exactly 11 p.m. and he always leaves himself an easy escape.
We look at the time difference, we look at the places, we look at the way the arson was done. For me, the difference were too big.
And the serial arsonist is ruled out. But finally, investigators have something to work with. And they start with the two main criteria for what is now a criminal investigation. Who had the motive and the opportunity to commit an act of arson at S.E Fireworks? The insurance investigator working the case can only guess.
Employees or some burglar or crazy guy.
Or maybe the owners themselves.
We looked at the owners' backgrounds, so it means you look at the financial stuff. Is there a motive?
A careful reading of the company books says no. S.E Fireworks was a successful company, and there was nothing to gain from torching the place. In the months since the explosion that devastated the town of Enschede, investigators are no closer to solving the mystery of who was responsible. They've established that the fire started outside the main assembly area, and it was likely set by a person, deliberately or accidentally. Conspiracy theories have surrounded this case from the beginning. And now a new one emerges. Consultant Dave Boers isolates a few frames of Harriet's footage that seem to reveal an unidentified man dressed in white.
There was a rumor that on a nearby roof, a person was visible.
A person still unaccounted for. In the blurry video, a man appears to stand up, turn around, and then get blown away in the second explosion. Could the man on the roof be an arsonist? Dave Boers and his partner start by estimating the size of every object on screen. Then they divide the distance the man travels by the length of time it takes him.
This possible person is moving at a vertical speed of approximately 180 kilometers an hour. That could never be a person. It couldn't even be a solid object.
In fact, it's a twisting puff of smoke from the exploding fireworks. Another dead end. The trail of what or who caused the terrible explosion at Enschede seems to have gone completely cold. But finally, months later, police get a lucky break. A fresh case of arson leads investigators to a local man named Andre de Vries, who'd been arrested for torching his own car. When they question him, police also asked de Vries where he was on the day of the explosion at S.E Fireworks, and his alibi just doesn't stand up.
He gave us a story that we later realized was full of holes.
In the initial investigation, police pulled about 20,000 mobile phone records looking for people who made or received calls in the vicinity of S.E Fireworks at the time of the disaster. Now that police have a suspect in custody, they go back over those records. It appears that Andre de Vries made a call immediately after the explosion. And before long, the web around de Vries grew tighter. Police seized his clothing as evidence when he was arrested for setting fire to the car. On that day, he was wearing a pair of red shorts. And these red shorts drew a straight line right back to the S.E Fireworks explosion.
We had a witness who had seen someone walk away wearing red shorts.
The shorts are sent to the Netherlands Forensic Institute for testing. Using techniques developed to analyze gunshot residue, the forensic team harvests samples from the shorts with adhesive carbon tape. The samples are then analyzed using a scanning electron microscope coupled with an X-ray spectrometer.
We found thousands of very small particles with a very specific chemical composition.
News came back like a lightning bolt that there were very specific fireworks traces present in those shorts.
The explosive chemicals in De Vries' clothes are compared to the chemical residue embedded in the earth at the blast site.
The particles on the clothes were very similar to the chemical composition of the fireworks we found at the premises of S.E Fireworks afterwards.
Then the quantity of particles on the red shorts is compared with the quantity of particles found on the clothes of a firefighter and several other victims killed close to the blast.
On none of these clothes we found as much fireworks residues as on the clothes of this suspect. It was of a very different order of magnitude.
But the forensic evidence is even more damning. Fireworks contain two very different types of explosives. One charge propels the device into the air, and the other produces the colorful explosion. Andre De Vries' shorts had significant traces of both explosives. So he must have been either literally riding the rocket, or he was at the scene of the crime, in the assembly area where the fireworks were put together.
So something very strange must have happened there. Our conclusion was that this person must have been very, very close to the site of the incident.
And that makes the owner of the shorts the prime suspect. De Vries tells police he must have picked up the residue while watching a fireworks show on a recent trip to the Greek island of Crete. But that story doesn't add up either.
We went to Crete. The distance between where he was standing and where the fireworks were launched from was so great that he could never have caught traces of accelerant in his clothes.
And other witnesses say De Vries was wearing trousers during the fireworks display on Crete. Police now believe Andre De Vries was at S.E Fireworks the day of the explosion, either stealing fireworks or setting them off, when something went wrong. If one of the fireworks accidentally shot into the assembly room in the main bunker, it would have triggered the massive explosion. De Vries is arrested. In jail, he confesses to a police informant that he was the one who set the fire that started it all. A year and a half later, De Vries is convicted and sentenced to 15 years in prison. When he hears the verdict, De Vries goes berserk and has to be restrained by the bailiffs. It appears investigators can close the book on the case of the Enschede disaster. The fire was set by an arsonist in the storage compound of the S.E Fireworks Company. The facility was not only overloaded, but also contained fireworks more powerful than the license allowed. It seems the mystery is solved. Or is it? May 2003. It's now 3 years since the disaster at the S.E Fireworks Company. The memories had begun to fade when the story is suddenly back in the news. Andre De Vries, the man convicted of starting the fire that sparked the blast, is in court again. On appeal, the judges rule that the jailhouse confession was in breach of police guidelines and is inadmissible. The forensic evidence put De Vries at the scene of the crime with explosive residue on his shorts. And witness testimony put him running away from the crime scene. But without the confession, there is no hard evidence that De Vries started the fire or acted alone. Andre De Vries is released and leaves the town of Enschede, apparently on his way to Malaysia, although nobody knows for sure. The men who led the investigation are devastated.
We still have guilty feelings about the fact that we haven't solved the case.
It's already taken 5 years of my career. And the key question of who is responsible for the first flame is still unanswered. And as long as this question remains unanswered, this case, for me, isn't closed.
Voor mij nog niet gesloten is.
At Ground Zero, S.E Fireworks is gone forever. In its place is a memorial to the men, women, and children who died here. 18 civilians and 4 firefighters.
Ja, de gebeurtenis is 5 jaar geleden nu.
The events of 5 years ago really did change my life. Back then, I was more carefree, and now, I'm more thoughtful.
It's also had a big impact on the way Schulte fights fires.
Ik wil de totale regie op.
If I do not have complete understanding of a situation, I will not let my men inside. That's how it changed me.
In die zin gevormd.
Chris Ganeshi and Willie Wogemuth were credited with saving more than 50 people in the aftermath of the disaster. Both were knighted for their heroism that day.
At the beginning, I shied away from the hero label because I was doing what needed to be done. I was the manager, so it was my duty.
Gerrit Poort, the cameraman who videotaped the explosion, struggled with depression for years afterwards. And he still thinks about the news photographer who was killed chasing the ultimate shot.
Sometimes we told Marcel, you're taking so many risks. And he said, well, let me take my risk. When I'm going to die, I hope it's in a fire. And that's what happened to him, fortunately.
With the encouragement of the firefighters, Gerrit went back to shooting fires, which means sometimes he films his own son, Johnny, in action.
He's a firefighter now, and we are extremely happy with that and very, very proud that he's a firefighter now. Unbelievable.
The Dutch have rebuilt from the rubble of the massive explosion that tore this town apart. But the fireworks that once symbolized celebration in Holland now have a more somber meaning. They're a vivid reminder of the catastrophic chain of events that changed the face of Enschede forever.